My fiancé said, "Love doesn't get smaller just because I share it." I said, "Then why am I always getting less?" She thought I would keep funding her family and hosting her chaos like it was romance. I changed the locks that night. 8 days later, her brother and ex were in my driveway. Original post: I'm Mason, 34, and I work as an operations analyst for a regional pharmacy chain in Tampa. My ex-fiancée is Kayla, 31, and she works at a bridal boutique. We were together a little over 3 years, engaged for 10 months, and she had been living in my townhouse for 8 months. Mortgage in my name, HOA in my name, utilities, gate access, parking tag, internet, all in my name too. Kayla had a beautiful theory about love. According to her, love expanded and made room. In practice, that meant she kept handing pieces of my life to other people and calling it generosity. Her mother had my gate code. Her brother Evan borrowed my truck without asking. Her cousin Leela kept bins in my garage. Even her ex, Tyler, never really left the picture because Kayla called him still family. Every violation came wrapped in the same explanation. Just this once, just helping, just love. I'm quiet. I like schedules, clean counters, and doors that stay shut after I close them. Kayla was the opposite. Charming, emotional, and very good at making selfishness sound noble. The thing that ended us happened on a Saturday afternoon. We were supposed to spend Saturday finalizing invitations and meeting a caterer at 6. I stopped on the way home for flowers, a bottle of Pinot, and the short rib meal kit Kayla liked. I remember being weirdly hopeful. We had been tense for weeks, and I thought one quiet night might make us feel like a couple again. I opened my front door and heard voices. Not one or two, a whole house full. Kayla was in the kitchen wearing one of my shirts and laughing at something Tyler said from the island. Tyler. Her ex Evan was in my living room with a duffel bag on the floor. Leela was at my dining table spreading invitation samples everywhere. Kayla's mother was standing at my stove stirring the sauce I had bought for dinner. It looked less like my house and more like a family staging area. Then Tyler caught a set of keys Kayla tossed him. I recognized the blue rubber key cover immediately. It was the same one I used on my spare house key. I said, "Why does Tyler have a copy of my key?" The whole room went quiet. Kayla blinked like I was being rude for noticing. She said, "Relax. He was helping Evan move a few things." I said that wasn't my question. Tyler awkwardly set the keys on the counter like maybe they would disappear if he didn't hold them. Evan looked annoyed, not embarrassed, which told me everything I needed to know. This had been discussed, planned, normalized. I was the only one who hadn't been consulted. Kayla crossed her arms and said, "You are making this feel uglier than it is." I said, "Your ex has a key to my house, your brother has a bag in my living room, and your family is using my kitchen without asking. Tell me what part I'm supposed to be calm about." Then she gave me the line like it explained everything. Love doesn't get smaller just because I share it. I stared at her for maybe 2 seconds. Then I said, "Then why am I always getting less?" She rolled her eyes. "Mason, please, don't start with the martyr thing. That was it. Not the key by itself." The sentence just made the whole pattern impossible to misread. I said, "Everyone out. Now." Kayla laughed because she thought I was posturing. Tyler stood up. Evan muttered seriously. Her mother tried the soft voice about helping with the wedding. I said no. "You're trying to live in my house one favor at a time." Then I called a locksmith in front of all of them. Rekeying both exterior doors and resetting the keypad cost $212. While I waited, I booked Kayla 3 nights at an extended stay in West Shore for $387. That was the moment she realized I wasn't bluffing. She followed me upstairs while I pulled her clothes from the closet. Same script every time. I was overreacting. I was humiliating her. I was territorial. I told her no. I was ending an engagement because everybody got access except me. She started crying when I boxed the framed engagement photo from the hallway. She said, "You're really doing this over a copied key?" I said, "No. I'm doing it because nothing between us stays ours for more than 5 minutes. The locksmith arrived at 541, which helped. By 7:30, Kayla had 2 suitcases, 4 boxes, a garment bag, and a hotel confirmation on my desk. She stared at it and said, "I never thought you'd actually shut the door on me." I said, "You've been opening it for everybody else all year. There's nothing left to leave open." She left with Leela. Tyler drove Evan. Her mother didn't look at me on the way out. At 1008, Kayla texted, "You are going to regret ending real love over control." I replied once. Love is not public property. Then I blocked her and slept better than I had in months. Update 1 4 days later, I learned Kayla had not accepted the breakup. She had simply moved into the stage where everybody else was supposed to pressure me back into place. First came Marissa, one of her bridesmaids from a number I didn't know. She texted, "She knows the key thing was too far. Can you meet her for coffee and stop letting pride ruin something real?" I replied once. Pride didn't copy my house key. "Don't contact me again." Blocked. Then my building manager, Devin, called to ask whether Kayla was still authorized for mail and lobby access. Apparently she had shown up saying she still lived there part-time and needed a package released. I said no. Devin said, "Good, because there are also 2 boxes here for a Denise and an Evan with your address on them." That got my attention. I drove over on my lunch break and there they were. A kitchen appliance for her mother. Work boots for Evan, not mistakes. The same thing she always did. Turn a line into a suggestion, then act surprised when I insisted it was still a line. I loaded both boxes into my trunk, dropped them at a UPS store for return to sender, and emailed Kayla, "Do not use my address for yourself, your family, or anyone else." She responded in under 3 minutes, "I thought you'd calm down by now." That sentence irritated me more than the crying had. There it was. Not apology, not accountability, just delay until I got tired. That Friday night, my camera caught her trying the keypad again. She was alone, wearing leggings and one of my old college hoodies, carrying a tote bag and a slim wedding binder under her arm like she was slipping back into a paused life. I used the speaker and said, "Leave." She looked up at the camera, startled, then softened instantly. "Mason, stop being weird. I just want to grab some things and talk in person." "No, you are making this so much bigger than it is." "No," I said. "You gave my key to your ex." Then she started crying. Controlled crying, neat crying, the kind designed to sound devastating on camera. She said she felt erased, displaced, punished for being loving. She said I was reducing love to ownership and paperwork. For maybe a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Then my neighbor Tessa stepped outside to walk her dog. Tessa is a trauma nurse in her 50s and notices everything. She looked from Kayla to my camera and said, "Everything okay over here?" Kayla straightened up fast and said, "Fine." Tessa said, "Good, because if it's not, I still have the clip from Saturday when her brother and that other guy were carrying bags in through your gate." Kayla left 10 seconds later. The next morning I met with an attorney named Claire, $325 and worth every cent. She looked through the clips and receipts and told me to document everything, revoke permission in writing, and stop letting family language muddy a legal boundary. So I sent Kayla a text and an email. "You do not have permission to enter my property, use my address, receive mail here, or provide access to anyone else. Any future attempt will be treated as trespassing." She replied 10 minutes later, "Wow, a legal threat because I tried to love big. It wasn't a threat, it was a boundary in writing. My director told me I was being considered for a regional process lead role on a new distribution rollout. More money, bigger team." That Sunday, I took my bike down Bayshore and left my phone on silent. For almost 2 hours, the loudest thing in my life was wind and traffic. Update 2.5 weeks after the breakup, Kayla crossed from exhausting into invasive. At 11:20 on a Tuesday, the receptionist in my office called and said there was a woman in the lobby claiming to be my fiancée and that it was a family emergency. I already knew. When I came downstairs, Kayla was standing by the front desk in a cream blouse holding our wedding binder and a manila envelope. Her face had that careful, sad expression people wear when they want witnesses. I said ex-fiancé, not fiancé. The receptionist stepped back. Kayla lowered her voice and said, "Can we talk privately?" I said no. She held up the envelope. "I just need one signature." Evan's starting a new job and needs a stable mailing address for onboarding and insurance. It would only be temporary. I actually laughed. I said, "You came to my office to ask me to put your brother on my address after I told you in writing to stop using it." Her face tightened. "Mason, don't humiliate me here," I said. "You brought this here. Not me." Then she switched tactics. She opened the binder to a seating chart and said vendors were asking questions, that I was making the breakup financially messy, and that if I would just sit down for 15 minutes we could keep things civilized. By then, my manager, Jordan, had stepped out of his office. I told him Kayla had already been instructed not to contact me. Jordan asked building security to escort her out. She stared at him like he was ruining something romantic on purpose. As security approached, Kayla said, "You are turning love into paperwork." I said no. "You turned paperwork into access." She left the binder on the chair and walked out with security behind her. Inside the front pocket was a handwritten card. It said, "Big love makes room." I photographed it for Claire and threw it away. That evening, things got louder. At 8:47, my camera picked up headlights in the driveway. Evan got out first. Tyler came around from the passenger side. Evan started pounding on my door, calling me cold, selfish, fake. Tyler yelled that real men didn't discard women for caring about family. The irony of getting that lecture from my ex-fiancé's ex would have been funny if it weren't so pathetic. I called the police non-emergency line and kept them on speaker by the window while the two of them kept working themselves up outside. By the time an officer arrived, Evan was pacing and Tyler had switched to the calm man act. I showed the officer the written revocation notice, the office incident email Jordan had already sent me, and the camera clips. Both men got trespass warnings on the spot. At 11:06, Kayla Venmo requested me for $2180 labeled reimbursement for shared wedding labor and emotional distress. I declined it and wrote, "You lived here mostly free. Do not contact me about money again." An hour later, she left a voicemail from an unknown number, crying that her mother had chest pain and was asking for me. I listened again. No hospital noise, no voices, just Kayla and silence. I called her mother anyway. Denise answered from home, annoyed and perfectly fine. When I told her what Kayla had said, Denise went quiet, apologized, and asked me to forward the voicemail. She never defended Kayla to me again after that. About a week later, I went to dinner with Nora, a physical therapist I met through Tessa's cycling group. Easy dinner. Good conversation. We were halfway through appetizers at a small place in Palmacia when Kayla walked in wearing the navy dress I bought her for our engagement photos. She spotted us and came straight over. "So this is why you're acting righteous," she said. Nora looked at me and waited. I said, "Kayla, leave." She ignored me and looked at Nora instead. "He acts calm so he can look innocent." Nora said, "I don't know you and I'd like to keep it that way." Kayla pulled out the empty chair and sat down. Then she said, "I loved him big. He just wanted to keep me in a box." I said no. I wanted one relationship that wasn't crowded. That hit. Her eyes filled immediately. She looked at Nora and said, "Ask him how fast he moved on." Nora said, "I'm asking you to leave." The manager stepped in. Kayla stood up so quickly her chair scraped across the floor. For 1 second, I thought she might actually walk away. Instead, she flicked my water glass hard enough to spill it across the table and onto Nora's purse. The manager called police. Kayla left before they arrived, but the restaurant gave me written incident notes and confirmed they had footage. Claire filed for a protective order the next morning. At that point, I stopped hoping the chaos would fade on its own. Final update, the hearing was about 5 weeks after the restaurant incident. By then, I had a binder with screenshots, doorbell stills, returned package receipts, the written notice, Jordan's incident email, the trespass warnings, the Venmo request, the fake medical voicemail transcript, and the restaurant report. Everything tabbed and dated. Kayla showed up in a pale blue blouse and low ponytail like accountability had a dress code. Her attorney tried to frame everything as a painful breakup and a woman with an expansive heart who had been misunderstood. Claire walked the judge through the pattern: copied key, unauthorized access, address misuse, workplace contact, third-party harassment, false emergency, restaurant confrontation. The judge spent a long time on the copied key. Claire had enlarged a still from my kitchen camera where Tyler caught it in midair. Then she showed a screenshot where Kayla wrote, "I thought you'd calm down by now." The judge read that line out loud and looked at Kayla over his glasses. He said, "Miss Kayla, this does not read like remorse. It reads like an expectation that his boundaries were temporary." Kayla cried beside her attorney. Then Denise testified. She admitted she had known Kayla made a copy of my spare key, but assumed I had approved it. After the fake chest pain voicemail, she realized Kayla had been manufacturing urgency because No had never worked on her before. The judge granted the protective order for 1 year. No contact, no appearances at my home, workplace, or known social activities. No use of relatives, friends, or former partners to contact me. Kayla looked stunned, which told me the word no still sounded temporary in her head right up until the paperwork said otherwise. 3 months later, life is quiet in the best possible way. I got the regional process lead role and the raise that came with it. I turned the guest room into a real office and gym. No storage bins, no emergency cousin overflow. No mysterious duffel bags in the hallway. The house feels like mine again. Nora and I are still seeing each other, slowly, easily. The first time she came over, she asked before plugging in a phone charger, and I nearly laughed. Imagine that. Denise called once after the hearing and apologized without excuses. She said she had spent years confusing Kayla's intensity with generosity. I told her I appreciated that. What I keep coming back to is this: love can expand, yes, but it can also be diluted. Water something down long enough and eventually it stops tasting like what it was supposed to be. A relationship cannot survive when every boundary gets treated like selfishness and every shared thing becomes public inventory. Kayla called it abundance. What it really was access, and I was the one paying for it. One thing Claire said after court stayed with me: boundaries do not dilute love. They reveal whether love was ever there in a stable form to begin with. Kayla wanted a life with endless doors, endless exceptions, endless extra chairs at the table, and one person quietly paying for all of it. When I finally said no, she called me controlling. Really, I just stopped volunteering to disappear inside her version of generosity. If you've ever dealt with someone who kept calling it love while taking more and more of your time, space, and peace, comment below and tell me what you would have done. And subscribe, like, and share if you've ever learned the hard way that love stops being love the moment it gets diluted beyond recognition.